Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at the new M9 bayonet used by the Australian Army. And this new one is specifically for the EF88. We do have other M9 bayonets still in service, such as the Ontarios for M4A1 rifles. These, I'm going to call it modified M9, because as far as I know, there is no terminology to describe it in the collector circles yet, so I'm just going to call it modified M9 or an M9. These were made to fit the EF88 and they were made by Landk. Now Landk were producing M9 bayonets from 1992 until they stopped production and shut down shop in 2013. We don't know how many were produced by Landk for Australia, so we don't know how many were purchased, and we don't know exactly when. So they could have been purchased when Landk were still producing them, or they could have been sitting in American stockpiles and purchased from the US. I don't know. We'll jump into a little bit of history though about the F88 series of rifles that took the M9 bayonet. So initially the F88 was essentially a Steyr made by Australia, adopted in 1988, and initially took the KCB 77 bayonet. Later, after about a year or two, that was replaced by the Buck M9 contract, as well as the GenCut M7 contract. So those two bayonets and that rifle were in service for a number of years. There were a bunch of updates to the rifle, such as the SA1, SA2, and in 2015 we got a new version of the rifle, being the EF88 or Enhanced F88. That rifle saw a number of updates, such as a barrel that was now fixed to the receiver and could not be readily detached. It had a bolt release, had an updated gas system, a whole bunch of small changes, and a bunch of furniture changes as well, like longer Picatinny rail and things like that. Now, about that time, Australia put in an order for some more M9 bayonets. I don't know exactly when that happened, but it did. So we had a number from Ontario. I'm not saying this is one, but this is an Ontario M9 bayonet. I assume the Australian ones were green, and Landk as well. Now, the Landk ones had to be modified to fit the EF88. I don't know if that's because the Landk ones in particular didn't fit and the Ontarios did, or if only the Landks were set aside for the EF88 and the Ontarios were for the M4A1, because unmodified bayonets were still retained in service for the M4A1. Now, Landk bayonets that were modified in accordance with a defence drawing, which I don't have access to, so I don't know exactly what the modification is, but after speaking with a few people, I believe it was a widening of the mortise to fit the bayonet lug. I believe there was a slight discrepancy there. If you haven't heard this, by the way, the latch plate on the base of M9 and M7 bayonets in some countries is often referred to as a koala. Not in Australia, which is funny because we're the only country that has koalas, but you can certainly see the face of a koala there on the latch plate. It's a lot more prominent on the M7 as well. Anyway, whatever the nature of the modification was, it was done in accordance with a defence drawing that I don't have access to, which is Delta Echo 10184 followed by 4 zeros, and that was under a weapons maintenance program. Those bayonets that are modified are identified by an M stamp on the latch plate just here, which I speculate stands for modified. Now, currently we don't have a name for these bayonets in the collector's circles. I'm just going to refer to it as a modified Australian M9 bayonet. I believe that's a very fitting rifle. Now, these bayonets are identified as being suitable for the F88/F90, which leads me to believe that the modification was done around about the 2014 mark, because around 2014 the EF88 was still referred to as the F90. When I was serving in an infantry unit and we started to receive F90s to get qualified prior to the rollout of the EF88, they were a slightly different rifle. They were two-tone, they weren't all black. But 2015 the nomenclature changed to EF88. So if the document that has the name of the drawing for the modification has F88/F90, that leads me to believe it was probably released in 2014 or before that. So this modification was likely approved around about that date, but again, I don't know. That's just a guess. And the catalogue number for this particular bayonet that has been modified is November, India, November 66-149-1390. I'm not sure what kind of number that is, whether it's a NSN NATO stock number, but that's what it is. And I speculate the actual change is probably due to the bayonet lug on the EF88. I don't know. I don't think LANK would have bayonets that wouldn't fit NATO sort of stock rifles that use that same mounting systems. Now we'll jump into the construction of the bayonet. As you can see, this one's still brand new with cardboard and plastic still around the wire cutter attachment, and the blade itself is coated in cosmoline direct from the factory. So I'm going to leave it in the scabbard as much as I can because I don't want to get the cosmoline off the blade. It's original and I don't want to lose it. But there's a number of differences between this version of the M9, which is the later version, and the earlier version, which is the Buck M9. So the earlier versions have, we'll start with the scabbard, a very different scabbard. It's got a second strap here, or strap slit for a pouch on the front. We don't have that here, we just have this checkered area here. And on the back, we don't have this strap running down the full length either with the clip at the base. You see underneath that clip we have a sharpening stone. Here, we just have the sharpening stone on the outside like that. Other than that, the upper portion is very, very similar. We have a hilt strap going around the handle instead of diagonally across the handle like this. And the older ones have the high hilt strap, whether this only has the one low one. The plastic used is a slightly different color, slightly darker, but it feels very, very similar. That's sort of the external, well, it's still sheathed. When you pull it out of the scabbard, there are a couple more differences. So you notice the blade is in the black and does not have a fuller, while the earlier versions are in the white and have a big fuller on one side of the blade only. Now, I believe the fuller was deemed to be a weak point in the blade or deemed to be unnecessary and was deleted, and that wasn't for the Australian contract, that's just how the M9s went about in the mid-90s. So, at the start of the 1990s, pretty much all of the M9s looked like this one here. And then about mid-1990, something in 94, 95, whatever it was, they changed to like the second type that we have here. But M9 bayonets in general, there's a lot of incremental changes along the life of them. And for that reason, they are very collectible, just because there are so many little variations. Now we'll jump into the markings very quickly, and there aren't a terrible lot of them. So first off, we have the M here on the latch plate. Then on the ricasso of the blade on the left-hand side, if I can get that, you probably won't be able to see it very well through the cosmoline and with the lighting, so I'll put a photo up of another one, but it says M9 LANK USA, just there. And that's the only marking you'll find on the bayonet. Now, these often have markings on the scabbard as well, to say LANK being the manufacturer of the scabbard. And that's going to be located underneath the cardboard if it's present. And I'm really hesitant to remove this original packaging to see if it's on there. And I can't really peek in there enough to see if it's there. So there either will or will not be a LANK marking on the scabbard, either on the front or the back. As you can see, the old Buck ones had it on the base here. I've seen LANKs with it below the sharpening stone, and yeah, and the old Buck ones also had the broad arrows. These new ones don't have broad arrows anymore, which is disappointing. I love a good marking, and sadly, we don't have those anymore. Now, I've been to the Infantry Museum at Lone Pine Barracks, and I've had a look at some of the M9s within their collection, and I noticed that it's quite common for these to be repaired when they do break. A lot of people say the M9 is an indestructible bayonet. That's not the case. They're very prone to breaking. They don't have a full tang, but as far as I can tell, that's never really been much of an issue. You get a lot of snap tips, things like that, as well as the mounting device breaking, the rivets breaking, just wear and tear. They get used extremely hard and they will break. It's nothing wrong with the bayonet, it's just how they're used. And I've had a look at a document outlining a whole bunch of approved Australian Defence Force repairs you can come across when looking at older versions of these, and I've seen a few of them. So I thought I'd go through all of the various repairs that you might come across. So first off, the repair of the bayonet itself. Any minor components that are damaged or lost will just be replaced. That's a common sense repair that doesn't really need to be explained too much. And the blade itself, if there is any damage to the blade, usually the tip is going to snap off. That's the most common damage I've seen on these. What they're going to do is grind it down so that we still have a point on it. And they're just going to ensure that the overall length of the blade is still above 150 millimeters. Any less than that and it's deemed to be consumed and will be sent for disposal. The only other repair you'll see is painting to the latch plate and the crossguard, and I'm assuming that's just to address corrosion because it has a parkerized or blued kind of finish on there. I can't really tell. And if that wears away and it starts to rust, that's when they're going to paint it. In terms of repairing the scabbard, it's pretty much the same as the bayonet itself, so minor components will just be replaced if damaged or lost. The rivets, if they're damaged or come loose, will actually be replaced. So I've seen a Buck M9 with some like corrugated iron sort of colour rivets, really cheap, look like they came from a local warehouse or something like that. So you will see replacement rivets. The sharpening stone will be replaced, and the brass inserts holding in the wire cutter, they can be replaced as well. And the cutter itself can just be sharpened with a file or something like that. But anything sort of outside the scope of those kinds of repairs, the item will just be disposed of and replaced because they're consumable items. So once they're deemed consumed, they're easy to replace. They've got NATO stock numbers to chuck in order and you should get another one. Anyway, guys, that's really all I've got to say about it. Very exciting bayonet to take a look at. Prior to my research into it a couple of weeks ago, there was nothing known about these. As far as I can tell, they're not yet known about or recorded in collectors' circles, so this is probably going to be the first published information out there on them. So very exciting for me. That's all I've got. If I've made any mistakes, as always, guys, please feel free to comment below, and thanks for watching.